How's it going, Summoners? Welcome back to another ProGuides video. I'm Kangas, and in this mid-patch update, I'll provide you our Challenger coaches' updated tier lists, as well as our analysts' thoughts for every role on the current patch. There's some big adjustments that we've made since the start of 11.7, so make sure to hit that sub button, and let's just get right into it.
First up, let's catch up on the top lane. Mordekaiser received a buff to his Q this patch, and there's no doubt that he is a solid S tier pick now. While he does still struggle in the upper end of high elo, his win rates from Iron all the way up to Platinum have seen incredible gains. The extra damage is a simple buff that helps players win extended duels. In high elo, Mordekaiser still struggles because of his lack of mobility, but nevertheless, his win rate did see a slight increase in this patch regardless. Teemo was surprisingly also buffed this patch, with his passive's attack speed duration receiving a small buff, and he also got a little more damage on his E as well. We still think he belongs in the A tier for now though. Teemo really only finds a lot of success in low elo specifically. But if you're fully committed to playing this champ, one of the funniest things you could possibly do is sign up with the coach at ProGuides.com and see if they can help you get to high elo with it. Something about only playing the simple champs and high elo is just so endearing, so who knows, maybe you can do it. Back to the changes from this patch though, Yorick unexpectedly received major quality of life buffs this patch too. His play rates and win rate have both shot through the sky. Players are just all aboard the Yorick hype train, as all of his ghouls are way more responsive than before. Over the course of this patch, Yorick has shot up the leaderboard and is currently the most popular top laner in the entire game. Although his win rate dwindles slightly as you approach the super high elos, Yorick's overall success is undeniable. From low to high elo, Yorick is a pretty impressive pick this patch, and those small buffs were all that he needed to pop off. At the moment, he holds somewhere close to 55% win rate across all ranks, and while some of this can be attributed to the novelty of a new meta pick rising, there's no doubt that he's also strong. So yep, we moved him all the way to the OP tier. The other changes that we made are that we moved Gnar down to the S tier and Sylas up there as well. Gnar has fallen off a bit as his win rates have slowly fallen. The rise of Yorick has contributed to this, and the meta is just gradually shifting. Sylas, meanwhile, has been popping off ever since his buffs as both a top and mid laner. This is especially great because of the lack of magic damage in the top lane right now, meaning Sylas has even more value as a pick. So our OP picks for the top lane are Darius, Garen, Malphite, and Yorick. In the S tier, we have Camille, Maokai, Poppy, Cho'Gath, Riven, Mordekaiser, Fiora, Urgot, Nocturne, Wukong, Jax, Gnar, and Sylas. Next up, let's run through the jungle. Overall, our jungle tier list remains nearly the same as the beginning of the patch. Udyr was finally nerfed this patch, however he retains an incredible ban rate and a passable win rate. There's no doubt that he's weaker than previous patches, mostly because of the change to Turbo Chem Tank. The direct nerf, which only took away a bit of his base AD, wasn't necessarily the worst. And before we move forward, here's our question of the day. Which champion's gameplay is the most enjoyable for you? Now I'm probably going to lose a lot of fans after saying this one, but honestly one of the most fun champions to play in the entire game for me is just straight AP misfortune. You max E, you build Leandries and Haunting guys, and you just watch as you press E and pretty much shred everybody to half health. But hey, since you probably disagree with me, let me know your answers in the comments down below. Alright, now back to the jungle tier list. In Hecarim's case, like our analysts expected, the nerfs simply weren't enough. He remains the most popular jungler and still has an incredible ban rate of around 60% in high elo. Hecarim, while less mobile than before, still poses a huge threat to enemies alongside his high damage output. Ivern, meanwhile, received a small nerf to his E this patch. However, as he's not picked up for damage anyway, his win rate really didn't change that much. He remains an S tier pick. Kindred received some nice buffs this patch, but continues to struggle in lower elos. One thing that holds back Kindred at the moment is that a ton of bursty junglers are really popular. They can either blow her up or just force her to cast her ultimate early rather than later in a teamfight. So in spite of the buff, Kindred won't move up. Amumu also received a buff this patch, and like we expected, he's still having a rough time in high elo, but is as dominant as ever in lower to mid. It's surprising though, as his high elo win rates, although still low, did see an impressive increase this patch. Although Amumu is still considered A tier in this list, I'm here to give you another reminder that if you're gold or below, you should probably consider him S tier or even OP tier. The one change that we do make is that we've placed Skarner into the A tier. With the change to Turbo Chem Tank, Skarner has also seen a dip in his play and win rates this patch. Unfortunately, he's also a champion who relies heavily on the extra mobility that the item provides, and he had taken a hit when the change was more likely targeted at Hecarim and Udyr. Just kind of a bummer. So our OP picks for the jungle are Hecarim, Shaco, and Elise, followed up by Kha'Zix, Graves, Evelynn, Nunu, Ivern, Fiddlesticks, Viego, and Udyr in the S tier. Next up, let's run through the mid lane. For the mid lane, let's first talk about Yasuo. He received a buff to help him scale a little more effectively. This buff has done a lot for him, and his win rates are in the positive once again. It's kind of surprising, but a little extra AD per level has increased his win rate by about a full %. As AD mid laners remain quite dominant in the mid lane, things are looking rough for the mage players. I mean, they even have to deal with Xin Zhao right now, but more on him in a bit. Lissandra, even after her buff, remains a high B tier pick. Although she was on the border of pushing for the next tier, remember that Everfrost was also nerfed as well. So for players who like to build other mythic items, this patch has been nothing but a buff, but there's no doubt that Everfrost helped Lissandra out a ton. An extra slow helps you land your Q with ease or just get in range to apply crowd control. Considering these changes, her overall power level remains about the same as before. Now we gotta talk about Xin Zhao. We still don't have enough data to make an accurate assessment of where exactly he should be, but tentatively, we'll move him up to the B tier. There's a lot of value in the fact that Xin Zhao is currently a flex pick. Most of the time, you can expect him to head into the jungle, but there's always that potential role swap that you have to be wary of. At the moment, Xin Zhao mid's win rate sits around 50%, but his play rate still remains really low. And the final change that we made is Sylas is also up to the S tier in mid. Just like we mentioned in the top lane, he has been popping off. It's actually because he's been popping off in the top lane that we moved him up to the S tier in the mid lane too. Flex picks are good, even in solo queue. Getting counter picks sucks, and giving your opponents uncertainty and also having the potential to lane swap makes all the difference. So our OP picks are Anivia, Zed, and Katarina, followed up by Pantheon, Victor, Talon, Annie, Galio, Fizz, Echo, Kiana, Viego, Diana, Yasuo, Ahri, Yone, LeBlanc, Kassadin, and Sylas in the S tier. And now moving to the bot lane, Kai'Sa received a small nerf this patch. There's no wonder that she is still a strong pick though. While Kai'Sa remains the most popular bot lane pick, the meta continues to diversify and make room for more and more. Varus and Yasuo are actually pretty decent picks again. Although this nerf alone wasn't enough to drop Kai'Sa down, the development of the meta has. She's still a pick though that you can easily fall back to. When you're uncertain, you can rely on her, but after receiving nerfs here and there, she's gradually gone from OP to just straight strong. Tristana was also nerfed this patch. Although she was on the border of the OP tier, this small nerf to her base AD was enough to cement her in the S tier. Less AD makes it harder to push, trade, and win your all-ins. Unfortunately, these are all things that Tristana needs to do to find success in solo queue. Ashe, meanwhile, received a nice little buff to her ultimate this patch. As a result, we've actually seen her win rate increase by almost a full % in high elo. Her overall win rate has also seen similar changes. In the late game, making crucial picks easily wins games. I'm sure we've all been there at some point. You're 30 minutes in and one of your teammates randomly gets caught out, and then you proceed to slowly lose the 4v5 that follows. So the reduced cooldown on Ashe's ultimate has made it even easier to impact games with her. Shoot your shot enough times and you're bound to score. Just don't tell them you play League. But yes, that basically applies to Ashe's arrow. Just like how you fish for picks with Thresh, Morgana, and Elise, you can now do the same with Ashe's ultimate. The difference is Ashe's ultimate is better since it won't get blocked by minions. Ashe is just a solid S tier pick this patch. Speaking of solid AD carries with CC ultimates, Varus also got a buff to his AD growth. For the first time in forever, his win rate is positive in high elo. He's finding more success this patch, and it seems like the last buff was finally enough to make him decent, so we moved him up to the A tier as a result. So to round out our OP tier, we actually decided to move Jinx up. She's slowly rising through the ranks, and Jinx's chaotic, snowbally design makes her a really good pick right now. In solo queue, you honestly never know when you might randomly get a triple kill just spoon-fed to you. Jinx's high damage output and scaling make her a fantastic pick at the moment. Following in the S tier, we got Samira, Tristana, Kai'Sa, Ezreal, Ashe, Vayne, Jhin, Caitlyn, Seraphine, Swain, and Sivir. Finally, we'll conclude with supports. So for supports, we got some pretty big changes to account for. We didn't expect the nerf to Rel to have such a big impact. However, we've dropped Rel all the way down to the B tier. The reduction on her stun's duration has done a ton of damage to her kit. A 0.5 second stun is a bit disappointing, and is probably just there to disrupt channels at this point. Making her stun this short hurts Rel in many ways. She has a lot less kill pressure, and is also a bit weaker as both an initiator and a support who tries to protect her allies. Rel's win rate has dropped about a full 2% this patch. Thresh, meanwhile, also received a small nerf to his W, and like we expected, he's still OP. Thresh's win rate has seen no noticeable changes. Alistar, however, has seen a big dip in his win rates. He lost a ton of damage, and that unfortunately made him a lot less effective in solo queue. While he could previously just 1v1 an enemy marksman at practically all stages of the game, it's not something that we see as often anymore. Definitely still possible, especially with Ignite, but around the mid to late game, he's basically lost 30 to 40 damage in a full combo. So we moved Alistar down to the A tier for this update. Finally, the one champion that everyone's surprised to hear I actually don't play that much, Braum received a very nice buff this patch. Maybe I'll have to pick him up finally. Although Braum's stats aren't anything spectacular, he's basically sitting at a 50% win rate. He's just where we want him, and Braum will remain an A tier pick. What I like about Braum being at this power level is that he's just a solid situational pick, as his kit kinda should be. Pick him when you need a defensive support or just need to block a lot of ranged damage. And one more change that we've made is Senna up to the A tier. Our analysts have noted that she's very popular in Korea right now, and there's even a new build for her with Frostfire Gauntlet. So we'll continue looking into it for you, but make sure that you keep an eye on the channel. So our OP picks for supports are Leona and Thresh, followed up by Lulu, Bard, Morgana, Janna, Nautilus, and Blitzcrank in the S tier.
Overall, 11.7 is turning out to be a little more impactful than we initially gave it credit for. Not necessarily because it introduced a ton of new picks in the meta, but because it further solidified the already good ones. Anyway, that's it for the video, so I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, remember to leave a like and sub to the channel. Also check out our community Discord through the link in the description down below. But most importantly, as always, best of luck on the Rift, stay hydrated, and I'll see you next time.